Checkered flags. This is one of the, I think, the most under talked about aspect of all of personal development. Checkered flags and, more importantly, red flags. These two things I think are the least talked about, least understood, most overlooked factors of personal development. Sufficient amount of quality is one of my favorite business phrases. I just did a consult with a guy today. Brilliant guy. I don't know if he's a 6 in 6 coaching member or not. But we determined relatively quickly, the guy loves to write, okay? But every single outsourcing job he's done, writing for somebody, has ended up taking him like 25 hours to do something that should have took 2 hours. Because he just works it to the point where, oh my God, I mean, perfectionism is an imperfect way to describe this guy's habit. He's way beyond that, okay? He passed that up years ago. And there was not much I could do to help him with the sufficient amount of quality aspect because it was so engraved in his brain. So what do you suppose I did during that consult? And this is why I get paid the big bucks, okay? So the guy is coming to me. I didn't try to correct his perfectionism with the writing, okay? I didn't think I could really do much to improve that. I was so ingrained into him. I don't think one call could have fixed it for him. So what did I do instead? Yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to write an answer in. What did I do to handle that problem? Okay, here's the question again. Guy spends way too long perfecting writing so he doesn't make any money as an outsourcer, and he wants help with this process. And so what did I do to help him with it? I didn't try to improve it so he could write faster. What did I do instead? Didn't give him a deadline. I thought he was, in my opinion, he was way beyond deadlines. Didn't give him the decision exercise. In my opinion, he was way beyond that. Didn't tell him to charge more. Didn't give him the good enough speech. Okay? I removed him from the equation. I set him up in an environment where he could not write. Specifically, I said, here's what you're going to engineer. And I laid out a system for him to where I said, this is how you can collect money for a job before you start on the job. You could take that money, give half that money to an outsourced worker. Now you are a monitor of sufficient quality, not a writer. But you can make a lot more money this way than you were even if you were writing. And so we spent a majority of the call helping him understand how to be a sufficient judge of quality. And so the biggest part that we had to deal with is making sure he wasn't going to step in and basically make the outsourced worker obsolete, right? I shifted his role, though, his thinking, from somebody who's a writer to somebody who's a judge of quality, but who's not allowed to edit anything. He'll have to send it back to the outsourcer if he wants any changes. That was a big part of what we talked about. And so I shifted his line of thinking from somebody who's a writer to somebody who's a judge of quality, and I removed him from the equation. Now what's going to happen if he actually does this? Okay? What's going to happen if he actually does this? He will eventually automatically improve his own writing, which was what he wanted to do. Okay? Because he will first recognize and understand what acceptable quality looks like, sufficient quality, and once he can see that clearly, then he can understand what it actually is when he does his own writing. right? I will automatically improve his writing for him if he does that. But I'm not allowing him to write for a while. Okay? But beyond all that, even if that didn't happen, he's still in a hell of a lot better position to make money than he was before, right? So this is what checkered flags are. Knowing what the finish line looks like, okay? Whatever you do that's important should have a sufficient amount of quality attached to it, okay? This is how I ask the question. Do you know what that looks like for every important task to do in your business? And I mean that quite literally, okay? Could you paint it and hang it on a wall and recognize it? That's the litmus test, okay? So somebody throw out, and I'll give you it. This ain't no bull, okay? Throw out something you know in my business that I do, and I'll tell you what that painting looks like, that sufficient amount of quality. I could give you extreme detail on it because I recognize those checkered flags. So I know what sufficient amount of quality looks like. Okay? So Chris's content writing. I already got you, Chris. What type of content writing? I've broken it down even further than that. If we're talking about sales copy, okay, I've broken that down further, but let's just say sales copy for products that are $29 and under. sales letters for products that are I'm going to sell for $29 and under. They're not going to be more than a couple pages, no more than 4 pages at most. If I can't say it by 4 pages, I can't say it at all. Furthermore, I am going to write exactly what I think when I think it, and I'm not going to stop writing because it's not that important. I'm just going to lay it out, but I'm not going to start writing until I know exactly what the sequence is. Now, it's going to take me 5 minutes at most to come up with the sequence of how that letter is going to flow. And then I'm going to sit down and write that thing from start to finish. Then when it's done, I'm going to hand it over to Will. He's going to clean up the grammatical errors, which is probably going to be 6,000 of them. He's going to flip it back to me with a couple questions. I'll answer that quickly, and then we'll roll it out. Okay? That's what that looks like. That's that process. It's very clear, isn't it? Very clear. Okay? If I can't make it clear, it means it's too big. Right? So like when Chris asked me content writing's too big. So I had to make it smaller. Okay? If you can't make a very clear thing like that, you have to make it smaller. But I know exactly what it looks like. And we could do this with everything that I do in my business. Graphic design, one of my favorite things to do. Unfortunately, I don't get to do it that much because it's just not a high-paying enough gig for the CEO. But with graphic design, oh my God, I have so many different things that I break down like that. Depending on what I'm making for certain types of things, banner ads, there's very specific fonts that I use, and there's fonts I'll never use. There's very specific color schemes that I use, and there's color schemes I never use. You know, patterns, all those things. They all have a criteria, and I can break them down. I know what the sufficient amount of quality, the end product, is going to look like exactly before I do it. Okay? This is what you have to do with everything you do in your business. So if you want to start making a whole bunch of micro websites for niche keywords, you got to know what one of those looks like for you. Okay? You got to know what that looks like for you. So is that going to be anything between 3 to 5 pages, optimized for 7 keywords, and articles no less than 300 words but no greater than 500 words, and the design is something that I can implement and have up in 2 days or less? Is that what that looks like? Okay? Should. It should look as not necessarily exactly that, but it should be as clear as that. Now, what is the argument against that? And there is a sound argument against it. There's a very good argument against it. What is it? Somebody go ahead and type in what you suppose that argument would be, because there's a very good argument against that.